Alright, so today we are going to be going over briefly this subscribe animation that I created. Now, if you're just here for an example of a subscribe animation, maybe you're looking for ideas for a lower third video or something that pops out into the corner to drive action, grow a user base, feel free to just kind of keep the beginning of this video on loop and you'll just see kind of the same animation over and over again. But if you're interested in kind of what goes into the components behind the scenes here, stick around for the next minute and I'll just kind of briefly go through the steps here. Let's dive in. So let's start off with the design side of things. Now, this was originally created in Adobe Illustrator, part of the Adobe Creative Suite, and then brought into Adobe After Effects for the animation side of things. Now, one of the benefits of kind of using Adobe Illustrator is that you can really kind of break, or any kind of vector-based program really, is that you can really start breaking down all of the components, which will then be needed for the animation side of things, and really kind of getting the canvas layout how you'd like it. So let's dive in here. I have the final design here that was used in the initial animation. All I'm going to do is Control C, copy this, and bring it into a new artboard. Now, the reason I'm bringing this into a new artboard is because I want to use it as a reference. So I'm just going to slide this down, and when I say reference, I mean we're just going to go in step by step what is inside of this design. So you can kind of see how you can go about just using shapes to really start creating anything you'd like here. So starts off with a circle. Now, this isn't a full tutorial on Adobe Illustrator, but it is good if you are just kind of already familiar with the Adobe Creative Suite. You want to just take some of the vector designs that you have and start animating them. And really kind of what goes into the design process here. So this circle has a white fill right now. I'm just going to change this to blue just so we can differentiate. Okay, great. Now we have a blue circle. Now this bell icon, I'm just going to copy this. I think I grouped everything. I'll ungroup this and I'm just going to copy this up, straight up. This will be the bell 2. Now the reason I'm copying this is because I initially did not create this bell. I found it on Icon Finder, which is a great free resource for very minimal icons. You know, something like a bell. It's not gonna have any texture or anything like that, but it does get the job done for larger projects. And really, once you start adding things to them, whether it's shadows, shapes, animation, these really go a long way. So all I'm doing now is just centering this. Making sure the bell is above the circle so we can see that there. Perfect, it's a blue one. Now, for these little dashes, all I did was I took the pen tool in Adobe Illustrator, and just, I'm going to zoom in here. I just kind of did something like, what did I do? Something like this here, and just kind of curved it over. Made sure this is about like that. And just make a new layer for it. Line 1. Make sure line 1 is above the blue circle. It also has the same color as the circle, and we want white to be the same color as that bell. Then I'm just going to increase that stroke width to about, I don't know what I had it as, maybe 13. And this is just kind of a rough recreation. This isn't the exact design process, in which case you might spend, an hour or two just kind of really kind of finessing and figuring out, okay, what kind of minor components do I want in here? But this is just real quick. Okay, so then we have one handle, and let's just create an exact copy of this. So I'm just Control C, line 2. So I've made a new layer and I've pasted it. Now I'm pasting it into line 2. Now, all we're doing here is I'm just going to right click, and again, not a full tutorial in Adobe Illustrator, but transform and just reflect it over the kind of vertical axis here. And then just bring it over and just kind of spend a little bit of time. You can line it up, but I think what I did was kind of use this corner and this corner of the bell as kind of the standard spacers. And when I say spacers, I mean align this item to the outside of this bell, and then I did the exact same with the other side, and then I think I just counted the number of steps in, so I might have done 2 steps in per per bell icon, but you know, play around with that. And this is just, again, an overview of what goes into a subscribe animation, the design portion of things. So then for these shapes, very easy. So for these shapes, all I did was, let's just create a new layer. We will go to a rectangle tool, get a little rectangle, and we want this to be the same color as this blue. And make sure it's blue. Okay, we've got one shape. We can just duplicate this. I just held the Alt key. I think what I have in my original design, I have this rotated almost like a diamond, so it kind of shoots up. And this is where when we get into the animation side of things, you have to take into account, okay, what is pointing in, kind of which corners are pointing in which direction. This is a pointier shape when it pops up than the other ones. The other ones are kind of circular, more rounded, like the kind of overall barrier there, the triangles, things like that. And then you can start playing with sizes, things like that. I think for this one, put it there. And I'm just kind of, again, you can spend way more time on this, as much time as you'd like and need. These are just another circle, just two circles there, kind of on the exterior there. And then I think what I did here was I changed the colors just to a much lighter blue that's almost white, and then I copied that color code, and this is going to give it a bit of contrast over time. So let's say you you get into the where are the focal points. Well, for a subscription animation, something that's going to pop up, you want, you know, if this were darker, all the shapes here, it would take away from the message. You want it to be one message, one action, subscribe, you have a bell going off, and so the focal point is kind of right in this center part. Everything else, kind of the mouse clicker, the shapes are kind of accessory colors, so you could play with the transparency. There's dozens of ways to do this. I'll just shrink this down, it's a little big. So play around, really, you know, get it how you like. I think I'm just kind of going through, and this is just shades. You could experiment with other colors as well. Now we have that, and then for the text, it's just text. So text, and then for Adobe Illustrator, just type T. That's going to get your dummy text, and I think my font was something like 140. Play around with the fonts, whatever you'd like. I think the font I used was Futura, extra bold. It's just going to say subscribe. Perfect. Now, what else do we have? The mouse. This icon was actually also found from Icon Finder, so we can just kind of bring that up here. You can scale it around however you'd like. Now, this shape here. This shape is, what is this? This is just a square. I think I just made a rectangle. And then let's make this the same color. A little off colored so we can kind of see the contrast here. We could even make it like a purpley color. That's fine. Now what we've done is I'm just, see this corner icon again, not a full tutorial, but if you drag the corners in here, your shape will begin to be rounded. Now this is where it's in front, so if I just create a new layer, you could make sub layers as well. There's many ways to do this, but for Adobe After Effects, you'll need everything on different layers. So this is the background kind of text shape. Paste that in there, and then I'm just going to move this layer behind the circle, and we have something like that. And now I think the last piece that I did, well, let's align these things, make sure they're all aligned properly, and then the subscribe is in the middle here, give you a gray. Now I'm just going to get picky here, but let's do a dark blue. We could just do a shade of this, I suppose, making extra work for myself. There we go. Okay, we have that. Now we're going to make this text white. And it can change colors within the animation. I won't go over kind of what goes into the animation, just because that could extend this video, another 15 minutes, things like that. But this is kind of, in a nutshell, what goes into the design side of things. The first one I made was a little longer, and you could even add a shadow in. Drop shadow, increase it a bit, bring the opacity down to, I don't know, 25 maybe, and you kind of get a sense of what feels right after playing around for a little while here. But yeah, so this is kind of the design side of things in a nutshell. I would then export all of this into Adobe After Effects, and that's where we are here. So I'll just pause this for a second, and alright, and now we are here again in Adobe After Effects. Now, one of the great things about using vector animations, kind of whether you're using Figma or Adobe Illustrator or something that really vectorizes kind of those shapes, is that they can scale, kind of increase or decrease in size without any loss of resolution. So that's really good for any kind of HD videos, 4K videos, really just there's no loss of resolution. And then you can start adding in other effects. So let's kind of briefly go over what's inside this animation. So it starts off kind of on a blank canvas, and this I made a few different variations that I'll briefly go through. But it starts off just this bell. Where is that? I think it's right here. Okay, so if I turn on my shape identifiers, that would help. Let's click this circle. So again, you can see the Adobe Illustrator icon, and all of these are just imported, these exact layers here, to be animated. So then we have this shape. Let's just break down the keyframes very quickly for this one. So this one I actually set up to a null object here because I'm aligning a few different things to it, and I won't get into, again, not a full tutorial on Adobe After Effects, but if you're already familiar, this is really where those kind of maybe these tips and tutorials kind of types of side of things will really help. So we have just a position based for the bell, so I could even just relabel this as bell position kind of controller. Save that. So we have it starting off screen here, and it's right about here. Then it kind of slides in. It goes a little faster at first. It bounces. I like to have a little bit of a bounce effect, so it actually overshoots. And then that's what's going to start bringing in this sliding scale. So when you create an animation, you really want to kind of it's not just an individual shape that you're animating. It's about, okay, how are all of these micro shapes and micro kind of components all playing into the larger picture of things. So that's why I like to have sometimes overshooting objects that kind of bump into each other, expand out when something is just about to finish, so it's like a next step. Okay, what is happening next? We're continuously flowing on. So then I'm just kind of going frame by frame. We slowly see this that shape that we created initially in Adobe After Effects slide out. The text is a bit faded. I purposely don't want it to be, I want it to be a little visible, but it's not. And this is kind of where you go into the storytelling aspect of things. You want it to be kind of visible just as it's settling in, the most visible just as it's settling in. And then from here, the mouse comes in. And now this is just kind of an extra I made for the sake of this animation, kind of the clicking. It does go a long way in terms of kind of giving the user someone who's watching a video, maybe it's a subscriber base, something like that, a definitive action to take. Okay, I need to click on the subscribe button wherever that may be beneath the video in order to kind of be alerted, kind of know what's going on. So the mouse clicks and it was kind of slowly scrolling along. Then we have, okay, as soon as that mouse clicks, it kind of jumps into the it launches off a series of actions here. So this background color starts changing. For the white text here, we can even see it down here. If you can see the keyframes, this color is white, or kind of a very light gray, and then it starts changing and finishes changing to gray right about maybe half of a second afterwards. And this is where you play around with your timings, see what works best. This is actually one of the longer animations for the subscribe animations that I've created here. Typically something like this, I don't recommend kind of going on anywhere beyond 10 seconds. That would definitely be too long, actually. This one's almost 6 seconds. Typically 3 to 5 seconds is kind of okay. It's not a separate video that they're watching. It's just kind of ooh, look at this. But you also want it to be engaging, where it's a bit of a trade-off. The longer times typically make for more engaging videos, where the shorter times it's kind of okay, this is right to the point. What would you like it to be? So anyways, that mouse click, kind of scrolling back and forth here, sets off a chain of events. So that's the word I was looking for, a chain of events. Might need some more coffee today. So the background color changes dark. The text actually changes to light as well. I can just click this text layer, open that up, and you'll see just about this, a little before actually, it starts changing from this gray color here to this light color within about half of a second as well. And then at the same time we have these shapes coming out. Now the shapes are just kind of an added burst. I'll make the shapes all green here. All of these are the shapes, and they're a bit staggered. You can see the layers, they start at different times. I wanted this one, kind of this pointier one. We've kind of touched upon in the design process, but I purposefully made it this a little pointier, so it kind of shoots up. It shoots straight up, and then you can kind of fade right into the background there, right as it's reaching its kind of highest point. There's definitely other variations that you can experiment with. I've done ones where the shapes kind of roll, or they kind of fizzle out, they expand, they shrink. You know, they don't have to be pointy, they could all be circles, they could be like bubbles floating up. There's many different variations, but it's really good to kind of get a sense of, in the design process, okay, what shapes do I want coming out when, and this is where it's like, okay, pointy shapes kind of surrounding those smoother ones, and the smooth shapes are going to be the last shapes that are seen. As we can kind of come in here, we'll see that last circle is that one that fades the slowest. So then from here it just kind of we have a bit, the last step here is, see this glow that's coming up on the subscribe? That is also keyframed. So if I scroll down here, and what do I have this as a glow? Deep glow is the effect I'm using. It actually, so it ramps up. You'll see, it might be hard to see from here, but it starts out, the value is 0, and then it's going to move over to a value of 87, which is higher, certainly. 0, so 0 being 0 glow, 87 being kind of a higher number of glow. I don't know what the glow units are, but then it's kind of, that's where it maxes out. It maxes out at 87, and from there it's slowly going to go back down to 0. Now, last component that I've kind of built into this animation, just because I don't necessarily always like symmetry. Symmetry is great, it is aesthetically pleasing, but with these, kind of these bell, I'll scroll up, these two, bell line 1 and bell line 2, I have them on 2 different layers and animating at slightly different times. This left one is actually going to pop out just a little bit beforehand, you'll see. Let me turn off my controller so you can see. And what we're doing is that left one pops out just a little before, because I just wanted a little bit of unevenness. And it's hard to tell, but this one actually gets a little bigger, this right one here. It grows in scale just a little more than this one does, and I could even overemphasize that by, let's say, I'm scaling it by 20% higher than it had been, so let's go with something even larger, and that's going to control the direction of the kind of from its pivot point, of course, where that's going, and from there you can kind of bring it back down and it kind of resettles. Now I'm just going to undo that because I liked where it was, kind of at the 120 mark. It's very subtle animation, because at this point the focal point is subscribe. The mouse is going away, everything is kind of fading back in, and I'm just going to play it full all the way through now. I can kind of see the bell comes in, the subscribe, the shapes burst, and then it just, you could set it to repeat. But at this point, this animation is about 6 seconds, is where you would typically just kind of extend the duration of this video, so that you can just kind of keep it on screen for the ending scene or outro of your video. You could also, of course, create an animation that kind of has this whole thing coming back out, because maybe it's at the beginning of the video, or in the middle, where you don't necessarily want to block your content for the entire video. Very quickly, just other variations. I mentioned kind of the speed of animation, so this one is only about 5 seconds. It goes much faster, actually somewhere between 4 and 5 seconds, whereas the other one was almost 6 seconds. This one comes in, and the main differences here are there's not going to be a glow. The text doesn't kind of scale and pop up as well when it's clicked. It's just kind of a fast color change, and this is okay. Let's just get right to the point of the animation or the message. That's really what you want, especially if you have something that's maybe it's more text kind of in this area. You kind of have to play around with the variables, see what makes sense for you or your channel, and kind of take it from there. But if you have any questions about creating a custom subscription animation kind of process, glad to chat. Feel free to message me or anything, and hope the day is well.